All right. Namaste and welcome everyone for HUA's webinar today on February 22nd. We have our president with us today, President Kalyan Vishwanathan, for a special webinar. Thank you for joining and being a part of this. I'm Ankur Patel, the Director of Outreach for HUA. And, we had a little unexpected, unavoidable situation. You may have registered for Sri Aswaji's webinar on the topic of our next retreat from concept to experience the eternal presence of Mahavishnu. So we're going to actually have Kalyanji have a whole different topic, but I think just as interesting, and hopefully you do as well. And we're going to talk about the importance of decolonized Hindu education. And Kalyanji, as the president of HUA, he's going to talk widely. He'll take your questions, but we're talking about Hindu civilization, history, culture, philosophy, religion, and we're going to put Hindu University of America in context of what that all means. We've got so many different courses and programs. Kalyanji himself teaches courses at HUA. He takes courses. If you're a student, you may have had him as part of your cohort. And we'll also talk about some of the other offerings we have, like the Experiencing Mahavishnu Retreat. And if you have questions about that, we can take those as well. So, Kalyanji has been leading HUA since 2019. It's been an amazing journey. When we took over, we had no programs, no courses, no faculty, no students, no money. And this journey has been amazing where now we have hundreds of courses, dozens of programs, thousands of people have taken at least a course at HUA. We've had hundreds of graduates. We've raised millions of dollars. This is all under Kalyanji's leadership, so it's always a pleasure to have him. I'm going to give you just a little bit broader introduction. Just he's got his master's degree in computer science, computer and information science from Ohio State University. He's got his bachelor's degree in electrical electronics engineering from Burla Institute of Technology and Science. And he studied texts and traditions of Hinduism from an Advaita Vedanta perspective through a 21-year association with Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati, who's the founder of the Arsha Vidya Gurukulam group of institutions. And before HUA, he was I couldn't find exactly what your title was. Were you the president, the chair, the leader of Dharma Civilization Foundation? But that was another institution that you guided, and all of that has brought you here as president of Hindu University of America, and we're glad to have you on. I really am. So, Kalanji, with that, where would you like to start us off today?
Yeah, I just want to, first of all, thank everybody for joining, all the people who are here today. And we'll just say a soft prayer for the health and well-being of Sri Ashwatji, who was suddenly taken ill yesterday with some sort of a heart instability, and he had to go to hospital. And he was supposed to be the primary, panelist and speaker in today's webinar. But because he was unavailable, I decided to step in and substitute. I cannot substitute for him because he's such a wonderful Vedic scholar, and he's going to be doing this retreat on Mahavishnu in our campus in near Orlando, Florida. And Ankur, you should put up the links for the retreats. I mean, it's always a treat to be in a retreat with Sri Ashwatji. Uh, you know, I'll say this about his retreats. See, mostly the Hindu rituals that we perform, uh, in whether we perform it in our homes or whether we perform it in Hindu mandirs or any other public spaces, they tend to be uh, mostly performative in a mechanical sense. performative in a mechanical sense. And if you get what I'm saying, one of the reasons the younger generation, our younger generation, that is kids born and raised in America, do not appreciate the Hindu temples and the performative traditions of those Hindu temples is because they don't quite understand what all this ritual performance is about. And perhaps there is no better example than this phenomenon than Ankur Patel himself. So I'm going to put him on the spot for a second and ask him a question, okay? Ankur, you grew up here in America, right? You were born and raised in Los Angeles. And what was your experience of going to Hindu temples as a youngster? And what did you learn from it? How did you relate to it? What kind of sense did it make to you?
The way that you put it, performative in a mechanical way, I feel like definitely initially that's what it was.
Mm,
And then I would ask questions and then I'd get some answers and it would become maybe because my mom would try to explain it and she really believed and she's, a bhakti person,
mm,
then it turns from, okay, it's not just mechanical and performative, but it's based in her faith and belief in something like that.
uh-huh,
But if I went to Mandir and tried to have the higher kind of intellectual conversation, especially growing up in public school and being the kinds of um, intellectual dishonesty that goes in, and now I can reflect and see the history that we were taught and how that all plays together to drive us away and ask
mhm,
questions that are not answerable by the people who should be able to answer them, maybe your Swami or your
mhm.
Guru if you're going to a Mandir, or our parents who they're smart people, but they don't know all the reasoning behind it, and then would again rely on
Yeah,
their bhakti aspect of it. And sometimes, you get to dive deeper. But it wasn't until Hindu University of America that I really had a structured way of understanding. And now that I know that we have this heritage, it's amazing that we haven't been exposed to it sooner, made it part of the curriculum at a younger age. And
yeah.
this is part of the different questions we get from people. Why aren't you doing K through 12? Why aren't you helping in this way? And so my
So,
journey has brought us, yeah, here.
yeah. So good. Just if you focus in on your experience of, asking questions in the mandir environments, Hindu temple environments, and you ask the priest a question, for example. After all, he seems to be the expert in the Hindu mandir, right? What kind of answer would you get from the priest, the Hindu priest?
Yeah, and I have only young memories of this. I didn't even try to engage
Yeah,
after,
yeah,
say, middle school or high school
yeah.
when it was more about the social aspect. And earlier it was language barrier. I'm trying to
Right.
say something. Why do we do this or why do we do that,
Yeah.
right?
Mm,
What does this mean?
yeah.
And it just felt like a non-answer, and then maybe the talk to my mom and say take him to school or do
Uh-huh.
the Sunday school or do the um, something else, right?
Mhm.
Figure
So,
out a redirection almost.
yeah. So the thing to get is, there is a massive gap in terms of the performative traditions, the performative ritual traditions of our Sanatana Dharma and the intellectual and philosophical comprehension of that Dharma. And that gap almost never gets addressed adequately. Right, Ankur? Am I?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So now, I think there is no better person today than Sri Ashwat who can bridge that gap between a performative ritual tradition and the intellectual philosophical context of those rituals, those performative traditions. There is no better person that I know who can bridge that gap. And a ritual performance. only comes to life when we as the performer, we bring a certain inner attitude, an inner bhavana, what we call bhavana in Sanskrit, an emotional, psychological, spiritual attitude to bear upon that ritual performance. That is self generated. It doesn't exist in the performance, it comes from within you, within me, within all of us. And Ashwatji is absolutely brilliant in evoking that bhavana, which is the context of all performative traditions in Hinduism. So, therefore, I just want to make a very passionate endorsement for Ashwatji's retreat on Mahavishnu. It's going to be one of the, a great experiences should you choose to, want to bridge the gap that I spoke about between the ritual performative tradition and the intellectual philosophical context behind those performative traditions, and gain some kind of ability to invoke the bhavana from within you that brings meaning, significance, and value to ritual performances. Okay? And I think most Hindus will benefit immensely from discovering this possibility for themselves in their own lives. Okay? So that's my brief outline for the retreat, Experiencing Mahavishnu. That's the name of the retreat, and it'll be fantastic if you wish to take a few days and join us at the HUA campus in Florida. When is this retreat? April first
April,
week, right?
yeah, April 2nd to 5th. We're going to start early on April 2nd, so we'd like people to arrive April 1st.
Yeah. So there is a link that Ankur has posted on the chat window. And those of you who are even mildly interested in this, you should look it up and get a sense of what this retreat is all about. Okay, terrific, everybody. So that's in lieu of Ashwatji's absence today, and we hope he will be well enough to conduct a webinar on the retreat very, very soon. And Ankur, you're going to be working with him to get it on the schedule, right? Yeah. Illustrate some ritual. Gauravji, I'm not going to do that now, okay? Because, I mean, you've all seen rituals in temples, in festivals, and so on. And if you haven't, you should at least try to experience it. And the entire retreat is about that, right? Okay, now I'm going to move to a different topic, which is the topic for today. Uh, and the topic is the importance of decolonized Hindu education. I'm going to pull up my slide here for a moment. The importance of decolonized Hindu education. That's the topic I'm going to speak on today. So, the very first question is before we go to decolonized Hindu education, the first question to answer is why do we need Hindu education at all to begin with? Why do we need it? I mean, after all, we're all doing well in our careers. We have our family traditions. We have our mandirs and rituals. We have gurus and ashrams. So why do we need an academic institution for the study of Hindu Dharma? Okay, why? Why? Why can't we live without this? So I would like to hear some answers in the chat window. Okay, please put something. Why do you think we need? Or you can say we don't need it at all. This is all bogus. We absolutely don't need an academic institution. Let me hear your answers. Why do we need an institution that promotes the academic study of Hindu Dharma? What do you think? Answers in the chat window, please. Okay. Survival of the spirit. Sela Smith. Okay. To know the real knowledge and truth about her heritage. Okay. Any other answers? Because the colonial past has erased our intellectual knowledge. Knowledge about our ancestors is important for grounding. Who wants to be ashamed of their culture? Ruchi Sharma. Okay. To safeguard it for future generations. Yeah, very good. Very, very good answer. You cannot safeguard something that you don't understand yourself. Differentiate between dharma and adharma. Excellent. Complete logical explanation. Okay. Aditya Togi. Academics is necessary for intellectual foundations. I'm asking for cause behind this. I don't understand what you're asking. To know what is dharma, the very essence. Yeah. It is actually a path to happiness and peace. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so there are a number of answers in the chat box, and you can keep adding. See, when it comes to the study of Hindu Dharma, there are two axes of study, fundamentally, two axes. There may be more, but I want to distinguish at least two axes of study in this discussion. There is the x-axis, which I would call the historical axis, which includes the past, present, and future. The time axis, the past, present, and future, the historical axis. And then there is the y-axis, the vertical axis, which I would call the philosophical or spiritual axis, which deals with the physical, mental, and the spiritual. Okay, these are fundamentally different axes. And the archetype of the spiritual axis, the philosophical axis, the archetypal, person who engages in this axis is the person, the individual, the person of the guru, the rishi, the acharya, the teacher, you know, the yogi, the muni, the siddha, a person who is fundamentally spiritually accomplished and therefore is a qualified teacher, right? And when you look at the historical axis, there's a different kind of person who becomes a qualified teacher. This person is a professor in a university. He might be in the humanities area, he might be in a department of history, department of religious studies, department of theology, sociology, philosophy, anthropology, psychology, and so on, where the the historical axis becomes very, very important. Okay. Now, if you go to a typical ashram, a typical uh, gurukulam, a place where a guru lives, some examples of today's gurukulams are certainly, Chinmaya Mission, Ramakrishna Mission, Vedanta societies, Arsha Vidya Gurukulam, ISKCON, uh, Art of Living, Inner Engineering, and many, many similar organizations, right? If you go there, the primary focus of the education and the learning will be the spiritual axis, the philosophical axis. Almost entirely, the focus will be on this axis. And there'll be virtually no focus on the historical axis. You understand? And if you go to, on the other hand, if you go to a university, say Harvard or Yale or Columbia or Berkeley or any one of those universities, and take a class on Ramayana uh, or Hindu studies or you know uh, any field in the humanities, the focus will almost exclusively be on the historical axis, social development, evolution of ideas, who found what at what time and how it all evolved and improved and became what it is today. So there's a whole lot of focus on this, on the historical axis, and almost no focus on the spiritual axis, right? This is the reason why, at Hindu University of America, we're trying to integrate these two axes into a single uh, framework of programs of study. So we have a grounded and well-rounded education in Hindu Dharma, both from the spiritual axis, the philosophical axis, as well as the historical axis. Okay? And the spiritual axis is very, very important. Uh, you know, I'm going to touch on the spiritual axis, the philosophical axis briefly on one slide, and then I'll move to the other axis. This spiritual axis is most wonderfully embodied in the Hindu concept of Purushartha. Purushartha. It's a Sanskrit word that expresses human aspirations and human endeavors. And you can all locate yourselves here. All human beings, regardless of whether you're Hindu or not, regardless of whether you're Indian or not, whether you're American, whether you're Russian, whether you're Japanese, whether you're British, whether you're African, regardless of it, of your origin, ethnicity, and so on, human aspirations and endeavors can be categorized into these four basic Purusharthas. What are they? Well, there is Kama, Artha, Dharma, and Moksha. And I've organized them in a hierarchy. I could put it linearly also, but for this discussion, I've put it into a hierarchy. Kama represents all that we do, all our aspirations, everything we do in our lives in pursuit of our own survival, pleasure, joy, happiness, sensual enjoyments, immediate gratification. Whether we go to a movie, whether we have an ice cream, whatever. Everything that is giving rise to immediate pleasure, happiness, gratification is constituted under the category called kama, right? And this is a universal category. It is not Hindu particularly. Anybody can see themselves in this category. Artha is a next step up. Now here, our concerns become focused on our own security, our comforts, conveniences, future well-being, stability in our lives, savings, retirements, investments, relationships, wealth. All of this is artha because we are focused on our well-being, both now and in the future. And our interest here is in securing our joy, happiness, pleasure in the future. In the future. Maybe next year, maybe next decade, maybe 3 decades from now, whatever that is. Whatever we do today in pursuit of this, securing our own future and our family's future, etc., falls under the category artha. And of course, you can see this, it has nothing to do with Hinduism. Everybody can find themselves in these categories. And 90%, 98%, 99% of the world is intensely focused on artha and kama and artha, which is our human existence is contained, completely contained within our pursuit of security, comfort, future well being, stability, savings, investments, relationships, wealth, survival, pleasure, joy, happiness, sensual enjoyments, immediate gratification. This is our life. Okay. But then in Hindu Dharma, there is an important word, an important Purushartha called Dharma. And Dharma, for the first time, begins to include in our consciousness the well being of others. Just as we want security, we want pleasure, we want comfort, we want stability, others around us also want security, also want comfort, also want stability. And therefore, dharma is what begins to reconcile between our personal self interest and the interests of all the others around us. And so here this includes, because once you take the well being of others, and here I mean the well being of future generations yet to come, when we start taking into account the well being of others, we enter the domain of law and order and justice, social harmony, duties, securing the environment, securing the future generations. All of this is dharma. And dharma is one of the most important distinguishing features. It's so important in Hinduism that in Hinduism itself is called Sanatana Dharma, or this Dharma that is Sanatana, that is eternal. And then comes moksha, which is freedom, fullness, total contentment, cessation of sorrow, cessation of rebirth, and the return to the source and bliss and so on, which is called moksha. And this is an ascending order of interests, from personal to material to social to spiritual. Personal, material, social, and spiritual. Okay. And this axis, this is the y axis, this is the y axis, sorry, this is the spiritual philosophical axis. And the Purusharthas in Hindu Dharma create a hierarchy of aspirations and endeavors. And they create a balance between the individual, the personal, the material, the social, spiritual, and cosmic. Okay, so this is, briefly said. This is the y-axis that I'm speaking about, and all of Hindu Dharma is concerned with this axis and to elevate people's consciousness from being so intensely focused on karma to getting more interested in artha, and from there on to dharma and on to moksha. This represents a spiritual evolution, the maturation of the human person, the human individual. And this is the heart and soul of Sanatana Dharma. Okay, this is the y-axis. Now we go to the x-axis. The x-axis is constituted inside of what I would like to call the Western paradigm of world history. World history. This is a reconstruction of Western scholars, Western intellectuals, European intellectuals, primarily during the Enlightenment era, from somewhere around 1700 CE to 1900, 1950 CE, there was this period which was constituted and called the period of Western European Enlightenment. And during this era, they came up with a whole new construct called world history. We must remember the idea of world history did not exist before 1700 CE. Nobody thought of world history. People didn't even think of their own histories. They maybe preserved some stories, maybe some legends, maybe some mythologies, and so on. But the concept of world history, wow, what is that? And how could anyone even imagine such a thing called world history? After all, people lived and died within their own parochial environments. How could we construct, create, imagine something called world history? Well, believe it or not, Europeans did, Western Europeans did during the Enlightenment period. And this world history created a framework, and I want to now distinguish the framework. And it goes like this: there is the ancient period of world history, the classical period of world history, the medieval period of world history, the modern, and the postmodern. Okay. Now, this is an extraordinary creation. It's an invention. The people sitting in universities in Germany, especially in the late 1700s, early 1800s, throughout the 1800s, early 1900s, they created this. They solidified it. They thought from it, and they made this a framework so unbreakable that it became the method of examining everything about the world through the lens of history, right? So, what is this framework? Well, one thing we must appreciate that the ancient people of the world, whoever they were, whether they were Egyptians, whether they were Mesopotamians or Sumerians, whether they were Indians or Chinese or whoever they were, they did not label themselves ancient. They didn't say we are the ancients in this world. They never said that. In fact, the classical people did not say we are the classicals, not in the medievals. It is the modern who label them all. It is in modernity that world history acquires these labels. They're looking back upon time, back upon what came before them, looking back, sitting in modernity, looking back at the various ages and regions of the world and peoples and civilizations and cultures and societies, the modern makes up this framework ancient, classical, medieval, modern. He too did not, the modern, he or she too did not anticipate the postmodern in which we are living today. The modern. What is modernity characterized by? Well, it is characterized by a belief in science. You know, all you have to do to gain credibility for a new discipline of knowledge is call it science. There was tremendous belief in science, in truth, in knowledge, in reason, in objectivity, in history and progress. Okay, these are the ideas. Human evolution, theory of evolution. All of this constituted the the framework of modernity, the paradigm of modernity. Okay. Now, looking backwards in time, the modern then characterized and described the medieval. The medieval now is characterized by the rise of monotheism, the dark ages in Europe, conflict, mostly religious, survival, salvation, Renaissance, Reformation. These are the principles, the patterns that constituted what we call medieval, the medieval era in the world. Now you go further backwards, the modern called this the classical. It was characterized by polytheism, plurality, mythologies, philosophy, art, music, architecture, and of course slavery, without which nothing could be accomplished. This was the classical world, the Greek world, the Roman world, they were all characterized as the classical. Now you go back to ancient, further down, the modern characterize the ancient as pagan, paganism, beliefs in ghosts and spirits, and shamanism, agriculture, which is the main source of livelihood, orality, oral traditions, superstitions, primitivity, etc., etc. This is the ancient. And now you come to the postmodern, which is characterized by skepticism, doubt, excessive reliance on subjectivity, a kind of radical relativism, like the post truth world we are living in. You have your truth and I have my truth. And as long as if I can defeat your truth, I win. Or if you defeat my truth, your truth wins. So truth itself is now subjective. That's a kind of radical relativism, complexity, and power. Power becomes central to this. Who's going to win? This argument about truth, oppression. And there is something fundamentally accusatory about the postmodern world. You accuse the others of something in order to bolster your own story up. And this constant pointing fingers at other people. This is one of the characteristics of the postmodern world. So now this is the paradigm of Western world history. Okay. And if you place Hindu studies or the study of Hinduism into this paradigm of Western world history, what happens? What happens is Hinduism is placed squarely in the ancient world. Not even the ancient, it's actually in the pre ancient world. It goes so far back in time, even beyond, backwards, beyond the ancients, right? It begins to uh, acquire all the so called critiques of the ancients, you know, the shortcomings. So Hinduism then gets characterized very easily as pagan, polytheistic, oral, superstitious, and so on. And it cannot seem to move forward in time. Okay, so this is the paradigm of not only world history, it's also the paradigm of progressivism. And to be a progressive person, progressive thinking person, you have to abandon the ancients. You have to abandon the classical. You have to abandon the medieval. You have to abandon the modern and arrive at postmodern. Kind of the contemporary woke paradigm, the postmodern paradigm. Okay. And what I'm trying to distinguish is that the paradigm of world history disadvantages the academic study of Hinduism fundamentally. So, if you look at Hindu history through the mainstream paradigm, the mainstream paradigm of world history, what happens? Well, you get the classical age of Hinduism, and interestingly, it is according to Western scholarship on India and Hinduism, there was the Aryan invasion of India or migration of India into India. The Aryans bring Sanskrit and India's literature. It's somehow connected to European language, Indo-European languages. The race-based formation of Varna and Jati, and an endemic poverty, illiteracy, conflict, and discrimination. This is the classical world. Then comes the Islamic world. The Islamic period of Indian history is now reconstituted as a benign intervention when Hindus voluntarily convert to Islam, Islamic brotherhood and egalitarianism, a breath of fresh air to a terribly straitjacketed Hindu society through the constraints and limits of the caste system, and the emergence of a syncretic culture, a magnificent syncretic Hindu and Islamic culture, prosperity, the emergence of Islamic art and architecture, the Taj Mahal, and so on. Then comes the British period, which wonderfully brings modernization and technology, the English language. If you see, we are all speaking and hearing in English. This is the benevolent bequeathal of the British colonial era to the Hindus. Education, modern education, freedom from primitivity and paganism, reformation of Hindu society, Hindu ideas, so caste, sati, etc., and the unification of a broken and fragmented India, the birth of British India, and eventually India of 1947. Then comes the modern period. It's the secular state committed to rapid westernization, which it is still undertaking, adoption of science and technology on a massive scale, and the upliftment of the scheduled castes, oppressed castes, depressed classes, and so on, of which there were millions and millions and millions in India. This is a mainstream paradigm. And in this paradigm, the only thing to look for in the Sanskrit literature is caste, is Varna, Jati, Brahminical privilege, Brahminical heritage, Brahmins reframed as villains of India. And you have to read discrimination and conflict, hierarchy, oppression into all the Hindu texts, whether you read the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Manusmriti, the Upanishads, whatever it is, the Vedas. You read it from a particular lens. You're looking for evidence for discrimination, evidence for exploitation, evidence for hierarchy. In the Islamic period, there is no violence at all. You had to whitewash the violence completely. It never happened. Hide all the evidence of destruction of the Hindu temples. Rewrite the history of India to present the Muslims as great benevolent rulers of India who even built Hindu temples in India. Right? And in the British period is when the British brought such wonderful new inventions and creations like the railways, the postal service, law and order, democracy, constitution, administrative services, all free from the evil oppression of the Brahmins and freedom from the social evils in India. And in the modern era, in the postmodern era, Hindus must be studied and represented as the dangerous enemies of India. You know, Hindutva movement as an evil, a regressive threat to modernization and westernization. And most of this simply regurgitates Western theories about India and teach them. And this is what is going on in universities, not just in the West, but also within India. Not just in Oxford and Cambridge, not just in Harvard and Yale, not just in Stanford and Columbia, but also in Jawaharlal Nehru University, in Ashoka University, in Jadavpur University, in Osmania University, and so on. Right? This is the mainstream paradigm of Hindu history. And this is what colonization does. We Hindus, we imbibe this history, this reconstruction. We assimilate it. We make it a part of our lives. We believe in it. We trust this history. Why? Because this history is constructed by the experts in the academia, in the colleges, in the universities, research universities. And this historical reconstruction is our colonial bequeathal or our colonial inheritance. To have inherited this worldview is to be colonized. Clear, everybody? So there is a box called the Q&A box at the bottom. Okay, you can put some questions there. I'll take a few. So the first recognition that we need to have is that we live in a post-colonial world which was impacted deeply by colonization for over 200 years. And that impact, at least in the intellectual domain, continues to live on today. Okay. And our children, meaning the younger generation born and raised in the United States of America, and even in India for that matter, when they go to school and when they go to colleges, they imbibe this paradigm of world history. Kamlesh ji is asking, can you show the slide? Yeah, I can show the slide. Here it is. Okay, this is the paradigm, the framework, and everything must be fitted into it. If you pick up a text like the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the most important question to answer about that text from a Western academic standpoint is when was it written and who wrote it? Why did he write it or she write it? What was their grudge against whom? What were they trying to overturn? What were they trying to establish? What was the historical period and context in which that text arose? And how do we understand the social conditions of the era in which that text arose and came into being? You see, that's a historical framework of understanding a text. It doesn't even deal with the content of the text. Even before you touch the content of the text, you want to understand all this historical context behind it. See, this is what I mean by the x-axis in that, the two axis diagram I showed you earlier. The y-axis being the spiritual, philosophical axis, and now you're looking at the x-axis, the historical axis. Now, here, this is the classical age, the age of classical Vedic Hinduism, an era of poverty. This poverty is an imagined poverty. Okay, people in modernity are imagining this poverty. They are imagining racial and caste conflict, discrimination, and violence. And this is the marker of primitivity, barbarity, superstition, lack of culture, etc. And then comes this period, the age of external interventions and the benign attempts of others, outsiders, to emancipate India and the Hindus from their own native darkness, inequality, and oppression. Right? And that effort, starting with the Islamic and the British, the Christian, almost resulted in a modern India. Right? And the modern secular state is characterized by the age of modernity, of science and technology, and the remaking of India as a Western style state. And in this project, of course, the rise of Hinduism, the re emergence of Hindu Dharma, Hindutva, etc., are deeply regressive forces that are trying to take the entire society back into the age of primitivity and barbarity. Okay? You understand? This is the mainstream paradigm. The modern journey of every Hindu. You see, unfortunately, regardless of where you are, and even non Hindus, the modern journey of all of us goes something like this. We start with ignorance, it's our common inheritance. We don't know anything about anything. And it gets filled up with misconceptions derived from colonial era scholarship, derived from Western conceptions of world history. And we assimilate it, imbibe it, internalize it. If we are lucky, somewhere along the way, we develop a little bit of curiosity about our own traditions, our own spirituality, our own philosophy, and so on. And that curiosity leads us to some knowledge. And if we advance in knowledge, we attain to some measure of commitment, engagement with the world, with the society around us, becoming responsible for our own culture and civilization, responsibility, and ultimately leadership. Right? This is the journey. And Hindus get stuck in this journey somewhere along in this entire spectrum. If you get stuck with ignorance, you know, what happens is they don't not only do they not know anything about Hindu Dharma, they don't even know that there is anything worth knowing. So it's a kind of double ignorance. I don't know, and I don't know that I don't know. I don't know what there is to know. I don't know that it is valuable to know. I have no interest in knowing. So it's the whole place is completely shut out of our consciousness. That is ignorance. Then comes misconceptions. A lot of erroneous notions about our own culture. The pressure to be secular and modern. Religion as an obsolete and anti modern phenomenon. No access to learning about Hinduism. Implicitly trust what is taught in school textbooks and mainstream media. Embarrassment, shame, or even anger about our own culture. This is the experience of all colonized societies, not just India. It is the consequence of colonization and is experienced by every colonized society, whether it is Aztec, Inca, Mayan, to the extent they are alive, the Native American Indians, the Native Africans, and on and on. With some curiosity and knowledge comes self initiated learning, maybe interest in family traditions, temples, rituals, practices, associations with a tradition or a sampradaya. But persistence of misconceptions continue. A lot of things are still ambiguous and unclear. Then comes a more committed engagement. A much deeper association with Hindu traditions, sampradayas, ashrams, a desire to serve and contribute emerges here. Time spent in study and learning, maybe within a tradition. You go deep into one tradition, deeper knowledge, definitely within that tradition, but still a lot of gaps, especially on the historical axis, which we don't touch at all in the ashrams and gurukulams. Finally, in-depth study, we develop breadth, we develop in what they call interdisciplinary understanding, interdisciplinary frameworks of understanding, where we get interested in philosophy, history, sociology, anthropology, psychology, spirituality, etc., all in conjunction with Hindu Dharma. In depth knowledge of rival religions and traditions, very important for today's world. Ability to represent the Dharma in the public square and defend it. Teaching and writing, media engagement, debates, dialogues, advocacy, policy, institution building. Take responsibilities for the transmission of Dharma across the generations, and a deep commitment and interest to protect, preserve, promote, propagate this Dharma that is Sanatana. And this is the journey, whether you like it or not, whether we like it or not, we are all somewhere in this journey, somewhere. And we are stuck somewhere. Okay. And Hindu University of America is the opportunity to get unstuck, wherever you're stuck. And from within the paradigm of progressivism, right? The older paradigm, the classical, the ancients, etc., are rejected for the new, for the progressive. So religion is pitted against science, falsehood against truth, mythology against history, faith against reason, superstition against rationality, tradition against modernity, the sacred against the secular, savage and the civilized, regressive and progressive, primitive and advanced, Orient and the West, God and the world, spiritual and material, soul and body. I mean, you can see these dualities, all this dual consciousness, the old, the obsolete, the ancient, that which is to be rejected, discarded, in order to give rise to the new, the progressive. This is the consequence of the paradigm of progressivism. And this is what our younger generation goes through in school and college. Every year after year after year, this is the message that's being delivered through the Enlightenment paradigm. This is the bequeathal, or you can say, in other words, this is the inheritance. This is humanity's inheritance from the Enlightenment era in Europe. And it's called progress. Okay. So we have to completely re-understand the Hindu paradigm, the paradigm of Hindu history, re-architect it, re-articulate it, redefine it. And how would we do it? Well, the same periods, classical up to 1000 CE, expanding and prosperous, extraordinarily literary, great successful empires, flowering of arts and culture, upward mobility of jatis inside the Varnashrama Dharma. Then comes the Islamic, when the Indian society was terrorized and devastated, destruction of thousands and thousands of temples, loss of higher education, universities set ablaze, poverty and displacement, jatis and varnas are on the run in helter-skelter mode, abad dharma mode. Again, then comes the British, where the Hindu society is colonized and impoverished. Its entire education system is replaced with a missionary education, massive increase in depressed communities. Jatis and Varnas are recast as India's caste system. And the modern, confused and mixed up, internally conflicted, caste-based politics and economics, scheduled, oppressed, depressed, blah, blah, blah. Sanskrit literature, which included Varna, Jati, Kula, Gotra, Vamsa, Veda, Darshana, Shastra, Itihasa, Purana, and Greek and Chinese accounts of Hindu society. Okay. And the Islamic period when Hindus mostly fall silent, they don't say anything, they don't write much. Islamic writings on the conquest of India is the dominant source at this time. And of course, Advaitins retreat into a pretense that all is unreal and temporary. And the Vaishnavas pray for an avatar, an intervention by an avatar that gives rise to the Bhakti movement in India. In European discourse, Brahmins reframed as oppressors and villains, economic wreckage, struggle for political freedom from a very weakened space, and modernity gaslighted into self blame and self disgust, science and technology as a vehicle for personal advancement, the wholesale abandonment of the humanities, and an eternal predicament to recover our ancient civilizational knowledge or to simply copy the West. This is our existential crisis, the predicament. And if we thought the West was a great role model, the way America is going, that role model, that belief in that role model is getting fast extinguished. This is the age of classical Vedic Hinduism, an expanding, creative, and prosperous society. The Hindu Dark Age, a period of decline, downward mobility, and devastation, which is obscured from our view. The age of recovery, restoration, reconstitution, and a return to prosperity and growth. This is an alternate framing of Hindu history. Do you understand? Yeah. So you see, I presented two paradigms, and decolonized Hindu education includes the deliberate and conscious examination of world history, of colonization, of the reconstruction of world history through European Enlightenment. We had to put that through a careful examination through a microscope. We had to evaluate it, assess it, interrogate it, understand it. So it almost is a study of Western culture, of Western civilization, of Western progress, of Western modernity. To understand it, for what it brings in terms of value and what it destroys in terms of culture and civilization. To understand it on its own terms. And then, of course, the other part of decolonized Hindu studies is to take a fresh look at the Hindu society, Hindu culture, Hindu civilization, Hindu arts, texts, traditions, its spirituality, what it had to say about what life is and how we should live as human beings in this world. And this two-dimensional approach to the study of Hindu Dharma is what makes Hindu University of America, I believe, very, very unique, because we're not sacrificing the exclusive focus on the spiritual axis, which we find in our ashrams and gurukulams. We're not sacrificing that and getting fixated on the Western historical axis. Nor are we sacrificing the other. Okay, so we want to bring balance to our study, a responsible, appropriate balance between these two axes of study. And that is what I'm going to call decolonized Hindu studies and its importance. By the way, a Westerner whose tradition and deep love of Sanatana Dharma can work for the transmission. Of course, of course, of course. There is no doubt about it. All you have to do is to immerse yourself in the culture, and you can. I'll take a few questions. Ankur, can you put up the course called Orientation to Hindu Studies on the chat window? So I will be teaching a class called Orientation to Hindu Studies starting in the spring quarter, which will be sometime in the middle of April. And if you haven't taken that course, you all should, okay? Everybody who hasn't taken that course should take that course. Because it's the first step in our decolonization. So I'll take a few questions. Kamlesh, I've noted your interest. Will come to you.
Let me just say something about the orientation to Hindu studies course. I
Sure. Yeah.
put it in the chat, and
Mm.
it's not just because Kalyanji says you should take it, you should. It's a transformational course, and so many people have gone into that class thinking, "Oh, I know what's going on," or "What am I going to learn?" And by the second class, by the third class, they're already realizing the bigger picture and what our thousand-year mission is, and everyone has a part in it, and this is such a important foundational course that again orients you to Hindu studies, what is going on in the space. And Kayanchi did a great job in his decolonized Hindu framework, uh, and that is just the tip of the iceberg. If you really enjoyed that, those two slides, how robust and so much information, and obviously Kayanchi is going to elaborate on that in the course in detail. It's a great experience. If you haven't taken a course, please do. I'm going to launch a little poll. Just let us know if you're interested in enrollment, getting into an HA course.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll take a few questions. Kavita Sati is asking, most people consider study or understanding of history as old, irrelevant, and waste of time. How do we make them understand and realize the importance of knowing and understanding historical contexts? Yeah, you see, you know, if all you're interested in is artha and kama, okay, from a Hindu perspective, that is survival and comforts and conveniences and security in life. That's all you're interested in. History has no relevance for you. It's a boring subject. You sleep through history classes in school and college. It's a waste of time, and you barely get a C grade and get out of there as fast as you can, right? But if you have a stake in the civilizational future, in the future experiences of our own future generations, right? Then history becomes very, very important. What happened and how it has impacted us becomes a very, very important concern. So, how do you make them understand? You can't. You can't. Yeah, you can just share about what you're learning. You can invite them to take a class, but just keep sharing and keep sharing and keep sharing. And uh, that's the only way. What does CE stand for? Devinder Lal Kalia. C stands for Common Era. Common Era. Okay, it's an alternative for AD. It's BC and AD. AD stands for Anna Domini, right? Anna Domini, Latin. BC AD. Okay, so C is Common Era. That is the era after Jesus' death. Ruchi Sharma is asking, would these credits be transferable to other universities? Yeah, once we receive our accreditation, yeah, they will be transferable. But accreditation is very, very important. Can you comment on the establishment of the humanities departments at the IITs in India? Yeah. You see, the problem in India is the following. When you establish departments of science and technology and engineering and medicine and so on, by copying almost exactly the Western exemplars for departments of science and technology, engineering and medicine, etc., that provides a very useful function in Indian society, right? Science is just science. There's no such thing as Indian science, Indian technology, or Western science and Western technology. It is science. But when you replicate the humanities departments, exactly like they are set up in the Western universities, in the IITs in India, unfortunately, you inherit the baggage of colonial representations of India and Hindu Dharma. And that inheritance is terribly detrimental unless India develops its own paradigm of the humanities and the social sciences. Okay. In fact, Hindu University of America, we are trying to do that. What does it look like to develop our own paradigm of uh, humanities, the liberal arts, and social sciences? Are we considered as Orient or South Asian? Yeah, I mean Orient is a broader category. You know, it includes all of the Middle East, the Far East, the Southeast Asian. Everything is under Orient, and then of course South Asian is more specific. Somnath Sinha is asking, can we talk about the ongoing war, DEI, critical caste? Yeah, I mean, in a sense, I showed you that paradigm of world history, right? So it is a clash between the modern and the medieval playing out in a postmodern society. That's what's happening in America. Okay. SB 403 Sundaray's case should become mandatory warnings. Yeah, it's Sunaji, if you haven't taken the course on Varna and Jati, distinguishing between Varna and Jati, uh, it should be, it will look at that case carefully towards the second half. Okay, Kamlesh Kapurji wants to talk about something she has already done. Okay, we are past time, and Ankurji, I'm going to hand it over to you at this point. Okay.
All right.
All right, give Kamlesh Kapoorji a few minutes. Okay, you had to elevate her to a panelist.
All right.
Okay, so
To a panelist?
yeah, to a panelist, and then once again, I will close out and drop out now. But I invite everybody to please consider joining the Orientation to Hindu Studies course. Ankur will put up the link again one more time, and with that, I return it back to Ankur. Okay.
All
Thank you
right.
all.
Thank you.
Namaste, everybody. Thank you all for listening.
Great
Namaste.
presentation, Kalinji. Thank you. All right. Kamashi, do you want to come on? All right.
Yes,
Thank you for being on, and please share your
your audience
thoughts.
is still here, whoever was there, because what I wanted to know, Dr. Vishwanathan already knows me.
Yeah. Namaste.
I go back in this struggle for since 1985. So when my own children were studying, and I kept correcting. And then I started a movement where I asked everybody, including the Government of India websites and the ambassador in New York, and everybody dismissed. In fact, they said, "Do you think so?" I said, "No, I know so," because I'm looking at the books. So, to cut the story short, some younger people with deeper pockets who had money to spend on research, they took over this task. And due to some internal conflicts and who will take the lead, it didn't go anywhere. Till 2005, when my grandchildren arrived on the scene, and I decided that I am not going to let them read this history book. This is crap. So then, the first time, I took the history to the point where evidence leads. So, evidence starts from retreating Holocene period. So, we are going to start history from retreating Holocene because tropical areas were least affected by the deluges and retreating and again forming, we were least affected. So our history, recorded history, based on paleobotany or pollen culture, multidisciplinary approach, I redefined historiography. And Dr. Vishwanathan has my book. It was published in 2010. Surprisingly, it did not get any traction from Indians, but all over the world, the academia quotes me. A history book written for 10th graders, 12th graders. Anyway, now I'm revising it. The same thing because the government of India has included certain chapters, and I am and every alternate. This is the information I wanted to give. Every alternate Sunday, which means not today, the next one, I'm doing topic by topic, revising, and the new evidence included. So it is a task I'm hesitant to take on because of my age. And I decided whatever is done, somebody else will take it over from me. So they are available on Zoom. Please do take a few, half an hour or so to look at those lectures. So these sessions already I am on lesson 14, which is on Jain Dharam and Zoroastrian Dharma. So the words which even in discourse today, inadvertently we use the word soul. Please do not do that because it takes away the frequency on which we are as Hindu. The second is the word caste. Now, if you want, I have prepared one page circulation for circulation purposes that anytime anybody calls talks about the caste system and you shove that face right into their face, is this what you're talking about? So it tells you who started the caste, what was the evolutionary beginning, Varan Jati Gotra, and then Sankalp Mantra. It is as old as Vedic times, continues still, and we don't use the word caste of that. And Gautam Buddha's assertion in front of the Magad cave. Okay, so that is one page. If I send it to you, you give me the address and I'll attach them.
Great.
And
Thank you, Kamleshi. Do you want to share the links in the chat now also?
yeah, I will. And offhand, I don't know, but I can send you on as an email of all the talks and the continuing life also. I'll send you two links, whoever wants, you can display it. And the second point is that there is another book I'm writing, and I would like some collaboration if possible, because of my own energy level. That is War on Cultures. And right now I'm talking about the insidious American imperialism through the CIA. So I'm doing multiple tasks, God willing, and please do attend to because I know everybody has become short span attention because of this social media thing, not more than 1 minute or 2 minutes. So I have prepared what is in Bitwa, one page only. Where do other sampradayas go? One page only. If you flash them in bold print and everybody keeps it in the pocket, and so that when anybody asks you about these subjects or Hindutva and political fascism and this and that, you can shove it in their face and not be on the defensive. That is the whole thing. No hand down look. Pretend that you know the summary of the subject. And that is the summary of the subject. Historical beginning, now, then, in between. So if you want, I can circulate that. Um,
Yeah, that's great. Thank
some,
you.
some
Thank you,
some of those
Kamleshi.
things are some,
And
and I'll
we look
share the
forward.
link.
Yeah, share the
You
link. And
tell
if you
me
can find
where
it
to
right now,
send.
put it in the chat because we still have more than 30 people with us today. So if you can find it and put it in the chat while people are still on, I'll give you a chance. Otherwise, if we email it, I see
I'll
Ruchi
try.
G is interested
I
and
I'll try.
Nina G, thank
And
you for being on. Nina G, we'll connect with you later. Glad to share. Yeah, Kushalji, very impressive. I agree. Eleanor, yes, I updated the poll and now I also have the experiencing Vishnu where I swapped the poll out. So please let us know if you're interested in the retreat or in a course. Kamashi, any last sentence? We're about to close. We've gone quite over. Thank you for being on. All right. Thank you, Kamleshi.
no,
All
I'm
right.
going to try. I'm trying to send it.
Okay, great.
Yes,
All
I
right, I'll give you
will.
another minute while I
Yeah, yeah,
wrap up.
yeah. Please do that because I'm not as technical.
No problem. Yes.
Person.
So thank you everyone for being on our webinar today. On short notice, we were able to change topics, but still, Kalyanji gave an amazing presentation. If you haven't taken a course with Kalyanji before, you just experienced a brief session. He does this consistently across a whole quarter, right? 10 courses, and there's progression and depth. It's connected. It's an amazing experience. And he actually teaches two courses at HUA right now, ongoing quarter, January to March. He's teaching the distinguishing Verna and Jati from caste. So a whole course where he dissects, analyzes, and reconfigures the whole conversation from our perspective. And it's a really amazing course that if you find yourself in those debates and arguments about caste or wanting to be better prepared and engage thoughtfully with other people who don't share our perspective or don't understand but might want to know. Kalyanji's course is especially for you. And then the next course he's teaching starting in April is his Orientation to Hindu Studies course. Amazing course. Please do think about enrolling in that. I have the poll up. If you enjoyed today's webinar, you will 100% enjoy Kalyanji's
You got
online
it.
course. It's the schedule is in the chat. When is it? It's
You got it.
9 p.m. Yeah, 9 p.m. once a week on there you go, Kamleshi. You got your course in there as well. I
It's
see it
not
in
a
the
course. It
chat.
is. These are sessions.
Yeah, so
Yeah, live
Kamleshi
sessions.
has been able to put her information in the chat as well. She's part of this knowledge and paying it forward, sharing it in whichever way we can. Thank you, Kamleshi, for your efforts and work on this. And one more time, let me drop the orientation to Hindu Studies course. There's a scholarship option as well. If $300 is a little steep for a course, it's worth the investment. But if you are really interested and have financial hardships, just fill out that scholarship form. It's designed initially for people outside of America, maybe in countries where the buying power is not the same. So we would drop or have a international scholarship. So the cost of the course is like $100 USD. But if you have other financial issues, please do reach out. This is the course that yeah, 4 members. If you have 4 members signing up, yeah, we can figure out a discount for that too. Yeah, so just email me about any of those details. Happy to help people get enrolled in this course. It's an amazing opportunity. If you're on the fence, let me push you over. Send me the email. Let me help you get enrolled. This orientation to Hindu studies course with Kalyanji is amazing. And Kamleshi's got her next bi-weekly course on the 15th. So if you want to check that out. All right. If
Just
you have
one
anything
second.
that,
Just one second.
all right, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm putting the talk link for all the talks
Okay.
already done.
And if you have initiatives or things you would like to share with our Hindu community, let me know. Happy to use this platform
Yeah,
for the Hindu cause, for people who are
yeah.
sharing initiatives, courses, programs, events,
At least
outreach
put the books in
opportunities,
the library. Put the
library.
books in the
Yes.
library, your own library. Vishwanathan ji, he has the books, two of them
Oh,
at
okay.
least.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Actually,
One
let
is
me let me
Hindu
repost
Dharma Teaching
Kamleshi's
Guide.
link. She put it in.
This is for
I
all
did.
the talks. I put down the link. Did
Okay,
I
let me
send
let
it?
me
Yeah,
put that there. There's 1 and 2. Yeah, this next link is just her talks on YouTube, so that might be a good one for you to click as well.
yeah.
All right. My name is Ankur Patel. I'm the Director of Outreach for Hindu University of America. Thank you everyone for joining another webinar. Hope to see you in the next one in a class, maybe on the ground in your city sometime. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Kamlesh ji. Namaste.
Okay, thank
Dhanyawad.
you.